Joining me now is Democratic Congressman from Maryland, Glenn Ivey. Earlier this week, he called for new Democratic leadership in the Senate after Leader Schumer voted to advance the Republican stopgap funding bill to avoid a government shutdown. Thank you so much for joining me, Congressman Ivey. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. You heard Julie Sirk in her report there. I do want to play for you some of what Leader Schumer said to me. Take a look. Some constitutional scholars and fellow Democrats, Leader Schumer, say this is a constitutional crisis. Do you agree? Is the United States in a constitutional crisis?
Yes, I do, Kristen, and democracy is at risk. Look, Donald Trump is a lawless, angry man. He thinks he should be king. He thinks he should do whatever he wants, regardless of the law. And he thinks judges should just listen to him. Now, we have to fight that back in every single way.
Congressman, where do you stand? Do you think that the United States is in a constitutional crisis?
Well, I agree with what Senator Schumer just said there, but it's surprising to me that he would say those things to you, but vote the way he did, which was with President Trump and the Republicans last Friday. In fact, he led the vote that enabled the continuing resolution to pass. So, I agree with him about the comments about impeaching judges and, the attacks on the rule of law. I mean, the list, it goes on. But we only have a couple of chances in Congress to take Trump on fair and square. He's been doing the executive orders to circumvent us. Friday was our chance to do it. And Senator Schumer missed the moment. Hakeem Jeffries, on the other hand, in the House, he had 213 out of 214 Democrats vote against the continuing resolution. We need the Senate to team up with us under Senator Schumer's leadership or whoever they pick. But we've all got to get on the same page so we can get this done. We've got the fight of our lives, the fight for democracy going on right now. We all need to get together on the Democratic side so we can fight together.
Congressman Ivey, what about the argument that Leader Schumer makes that, okay, let's say the government shut down. He believes Democrats would have faced a backlash for that. But additionally, he argues that that would have given President Trump and Elon Musk a roadmap for who essential and non-essential workers are. It would have given them a roadmap for what agencies can actually stay closed. And he believes that that would have basically emboldened their efforts to gut the government.
It's hard for me to see how Elon Musk could be any bolder than he already is. I mean, they're already firing. My district has about 50,000 plus government employees. They're getting laid off. They're getting riffed. The wolf's at the door for us right now. So we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to block it. The hypothetical about what might have happened if the government had shut down, we can debate that. But these guys are already doing the stuff that he's claiming he's worried about. The only way we can stop it is to take advantages when we have them. We're doing great in the courts. They're getting great results. A lot of injunctions being put in place. But in Congress, we had a big opportunity last week to push back, and we missed that moment. Now, we've got a couple more coming up. The debt ceiling's coming up. The continuing resolution will expire in 6 months. Maybe that's another chance, but we've got to get on the same page and make sure we take advantage of it at the time. And we've also got to recognize, as Senator Kim said a minute ago, there's a sense of urgency out there. People are losing their jobs now. People are losing their houses now. The government's being put in chaos now. Clinical trials are being stopped and the like. We've got to take that on right now. And then the next vote's coming up, like cuts to Medicaid, $900 billion roughly. That's going to mean people are losing medical care and the like in just a few weeks. So we've got to get on this. The sense of urgency piece, we've got to make sure that we're feeling it in the Democratic caucus in the House and the Senate, and that we convey that on the floor with our votes. We didn't do that last week.
Congressman, you bring up the debt limit, and I'm curious, would you be willing to let the U.S. default on its debt if you believed that was the only way to stand up to President Trump?
I think we're going to have to see how that plays out. I mean, one of the things that we need to watch very closely is the Republican goal of addressing the debt ceiling piece to allow President Trump to make his $4 trillion tax cut. We've got to make sure we don't allow that to happen, because we know that the money, it's not going to working class people. It's going to go to Elon Musk and the billionaire buddies that attended the inauguration for President Trump. And the other part of this, we've got to make sure it happens is, you know, when people voted for Donald Trump back in November, most of them did it based on his claim that he was going to do better for them economically. He was going to help them out with the economy. He's done exactly the opposite. The tariffs wars are taking money out of people's pockets. The Medicaid cuts are going to be damaging too. Shutting down the government, which I think was another pushback as to why they wouldn't have wanted to do that, is also going to be damaging to regular people who rely on the government one way or the other, sometimes for their services, sometimes as employees because they provide the engine for their local economies. We've got to make sure we explain to the people what the damages are going to be if Trump is allowed to continue. And that might be at that vote, but I hope we can do more of it as we approach that vote so the public is ready for what we're going to try and do at that time.
Congressman, I hear you're not taking a potential default off the table. Let me ask you, though, because you're talking about the taxes. Republicans plan to do that through reconciliation. I hate to get too into the weeds, but what leverage do Democrats have? They don't need your votes.
I mean, the key part that they're relying on is to maintain Republican unanimity in the votes that they've done. That's what happened last week. And the key thing I think we need to try and do is convey to I think there's about 18 Republicans who are in seats that were carried by Harris. We're currently targeting those districts to make sure we explain to those folks, here's what's happening based on what Trump has done so far. Here's how it's hurting you. We need you to let your elected officials know that they have to change course. In fact, you know, Senator Kemp being there in Congressman Keene's district is a great way to deliver that message. And I think you're going to see more of that as the weeks go forward.
I want to read something that Senator Bernie Sanders said in the New York Times and get your reaction on the other side. He said one of the aspects of this tour, he's doing an anti-oligarchy tour, is to try to rally people to get engaged in the political process and run as independents outside of the Democratic Party. Our latest NBC News poll shows the Democratic Party reaching an all-time low in popularity. Given all of that, Congressman, is Senator Sanders right?
No. I appreciate Senator Sanders. He's an independent, so I'm sure he doesn't want to be alone in the Senate and would love to have company. But my perspective is we need to take the House back. We've got a chance to do that in 2026. We need to add Democrats to make sure that that happens. And the districts I just mentioned are the ones we should target. But I think if we convey the message and make sure we explain to them what Trump is doing, but also explain to them the benefits, the affirmative message and strategy that the Democrats have, how we can help improve their lives, I think that'll help us carry those districts, maintain the seats that we've got, take the House back and make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House.
Congressman, very quickly, some Democrats are saying to me a day that we are focused on this intra-party fighting and not focused on the economy is a day that we are losing the message war. Is your opposition to Leader Schumer, are you concerned that it runs the risk of overshadowing one of the key issues for Democrats?
Sure. I'd rather be talking about the economy. We talked about it a moment ago, but at the end of the day, if we're not going to be voting together, if we're not going to be maximizing our power in the House and in the Senate, I don't know that it's going to matter that much. It's certainly not for people in my district who are losing their jobs now and counting on us to do something now. They need this to happen now, and that's why I'm pushing for it.
All right, Congressman Glenn Ivey, thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.